G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the YouTube channel. How are we all doing on this lovely, lovely evening? We've got the golden hour upon us almost. Or maybe it's just starting. But boys and girls, it is a good time to get out and ride. Been a bit of a headache with work at the moment. I've been told there's people in there that I've got to go see, but the bookings weren't in my system. It was a huge mess around, so like, your boy's just getting thrown back and forth like a college prostitute, you know what I'm saying? But that's alright. We're getting out here, we're going for a ride, we're doing our things, doing the Lord's work, mate. It is what it is. But boys and girls, I do have a topic today, but before we get into it, g'day ladies and gents, my name is Nathan. I make videos about motorcycles, and you know how we do things around here. If in case one of us gets bored, maybe I'll stop one day, but until then, we're going to keep on boogieing. So ladies and gents, the topic I have today is about a genre of bike I think gets treated a little bit unfairly, not totally unfairly, but vintage motorcycles, baby. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel that the vintage motorcycle scene doesn't get as much love as the vintage car scene. Now, look, I might be a part of this too. I think vintage cars look way better than some of the vintage motorcycles, but that doesn't mean all of them look bad. Some of them look a bit strange and dated, whereas the old cars look kind of nice. But unfortunately, a lot of the bikes in the 60s and 70s are really hard to come by in a good state, whereas the 80s bikes are the ones you see a bit more. And that's that square headlights where a lot of people aren't a fan of, but some of them, dude. Some of them are magical, and I think they need more love. You guys already know my stance on some of the beautiful vintage CBR 250Rs, so like the MC19, the MC22s, gorgeous motorcycles, which are growing in popularity because they deserve it. Of any bike on the market, that is one that absolutely deserves the love it is now getting. But it's taken its time, you know what I mean? Something about vintage carbureted motorcycles, dude. They're made in a different way from a different time, with the mentality behind making them was also different. So they weren't making them just to be the fastest thing since sliced bread. They were making them because they wanted to make it. They were making them because they could. I mean, a 250 that revs to 18,500 RPM. Come on, dude. They're great. You had those 400cc V4s. You had the 800cc V4s. They're just getting a certain amount of love and development that we just don't see in nowadays because of the bloody emissions laws and pansy laws. You know what I mean? You can't have anything fun anymore. That's why the rise of the twins have become so popular. Whereas we had the two-strokes, we had the four-cylinder small engines. Now, the closest thing we got to a vintage bike in the modern era, besides the Suzuki Katana, which I think is hideous, is like the ZX4R in terms of the philosophy behind it. It's a small engine that revs to the moon. Why? Because we can. Is it fast? Yes, but no. It's not a fast bike by any means, but it can go fast, but just not fast. You know what I mean? For what it is fast. But in terms of actual top speed bikes, it's not that fast. But it's about the joy of having it. I don't know if any of you guys have had the chance of riding a small CC engine that revs that high, but if you do, take it, because it is an experience that you will not really recover from. Those little small CC high-revving engines, like, they perform in a way that no normal engine does, okay? They're good fun. They're fun as hell. They sound delightful. They feel amazing. Now, they're not going to blow your socks off in terms of performance, right? This is not what that is about, but it's just everything else. There's a reason why people love the old Harleys, like the panheads and the shovel heads and whatnot, because look, there's a certain charm that comes with them. They're not fast. They don't work the best. But guess what? It's about the experience of having them. They look good. They sound great. And you just don't get that out of a lot of the newer bikes. The newer bikes, don't get me wrong, look delightful, but everything else about them, it's never the same. For one, exhausts. The stock exhaust in the modern days suck ass. Exhaust in the old vintage bikes don't sound too bad. When they started putting a lot of mufflers on them, you could tell they sort of went downhill a little bit. But that's okay, you can still change the exhaust, but they didn't have catalytic converters or anything until like the early thousands, I think, is when they started doing it for bikes, which was delightful. But they just made things because they could and they wanted to. They weren't such a legal requirement. And when they were made, you could buy a MotoGP bike for the street. That's how intense it was back in the older bikes. Nowadays, you get the World Superbike class. That's why the R9s and stuff exist. But it's not the same, because the MotoGP is so out of the normality, and also the MotoGP bikes are just not as exciting these days, especially with the 800cc thing they just brought in. No one really cares, man. So that's a shame, but having the option back then was wicked. Also, look, I love me a CBR 1000, okay? Don't get me wrong. The new ones, it's a shame they don't really do the double Rs. They only make the triple Rs, and they cost an arm and a leg to get them. But you go back to those vintage ones, like the SC28s, and I tell you what, son, they look just like a big, fat, chunky version of the MC19/22s. There's a reason they call those the baby blades, and the Fireblade, the first 900. It is not fast by today's standards, but it is quick, all right? It's still fast. It's just not like modern day superbike fast. But people underestimate just how fast those old bikes were. Like, remember the R6 engine that's still being, I think, put in the bike was developed in the 90s or something. So sure, it might perform a little bit different now, but it's the same engine. Back then, boys and girls, the biking culture was different. People had passion. People had, you know, they cared about the bikes they were making. Some of them were questionable, don't get me wrong. Some of them still are questionable. But there's just a certain charm I feel like is lost in the modern bikes that the vintage bikes just do differently. Now, it's a shame that the two-strokes sort of had to go, but I understand why. All right, that's a complete emissions garbage rubbish thing. But the way that two-strokes delivered power through the power bands, it's a scene that you just can't get anymore. Two-strokes are fantastic engines, the way they perform. Sure, they're annoying to have to fill up and put the oil in or do the mixture, whatever the hell you're thinking. You might have an oil in the tank kind of one, or you have to put the oil in a different little reservoir, which is my preferred way to do it, because then you always know exactly how much oil you have in the reservoir needed, so you don't have to worry about it being like, shicer, how much do I need to put in the tank? The point is, they were just made differently, man. There's a different mentality behind the whole thing. And the way those bikes looked, they were made for the time, of course, but they were made for looks. They were made for what was the considered best thing at the time. Like the Fireblade SC20 had holes in the thing to let air get through, and oh man, there's just something special about them. I do love me a vintage motorcycle because they just do something special. Now, something I particularly like is the old Harleys and old Indian bikes, all right, is the jockey shit. Now, there's multiple. You'll either have it here, you'll have it here, or it'll be on the back. Now, a lot of those old bikes had left-handed throttles. You know why? Because they were police bikes. And why would you have a left-handed throttle on a police bike with a foot clutch? I'd say you could pull your gun out onto your right hand and shoot at somebody. That's the kind of shit I like, man. You don't see that anymore. We get automatic bikes now, which I don't really care about. The old Vespas where you pull the clutch and the whole assembly rotates, so instead of shifting with your foot, you rotate the whole thing with the clutch lever included. And dude, there's a man with an orange Vespa who watches our videos here, and you see him sometimes. He was in one of the bike group rides that I did. That man rides that thing like there's no tomorrow. It is a great little thing. I loved it. He showed me about how it worked. I didn't take it for a go, but the clutch lever was so wiggy to me that I was like, oh my god, what is this weird ass piece of machinery? And honestly, I think I had a ball just looking at it, because there's something, it's about the philosophy, right? The whole design philosophy of vintage bikes is so different compared to the modern stuff. Everything was mechanical. There was no electronics in those things. The headlights sucked ass. Their brakes weren't great, but you still loved doing everything. They were just great times. And you know what? It's a shame they don't get the love they deserve. So I'm out here doing a little PSA saying, ladies and gents, I recommend you go out and have a look at some vintage motorcycles, especially as your first bike. Now look, if you are totally mechanically inept, maybe it's a bad idea, because look, those old bikes do have issues when it comes to reliability. Not all of them, but some of them do. And if you don't have any idea what you're doing when it comes to mechanic stuff, you might have a bad time, all right? Might. What is going on in this lane? And if you want to learn, I would say go for it too. Sure, some parts might be hard to find, but it only adds to the joy. And maybe if you want to have a second bike, go for it. Like an old VFR, dude, they make noises that people don't get to experience. What is it, the RVF as well? Those things are just, ooh! They get you moist in places you probably shouldn't say legally. Oh, the exhaust notes, man. The carburetor V4s, they speak differently. And honestly, they're orgasmic, how gorgeous they sound, the rumbles they make. The ergonomics of those bikes were terrible, okay? They weren't great. Their seats weren't quality. Everything was built in a very old school way, and that's fine, but man, they had turbo motorcycles back then and stuff like that. Like, you just don't get that anymore. And it's a sad state of affairs, but also, like, come on now, if you had the choice between an old CBR 250 and an R1 of the modern era, most people will say, oh, the R1's pretty spicy just because that crossplane and the power delivery. But I don't know, for someone like me, I like R1s, but those old 250 screamers, I think I might even get a little bit saucy and get one of those over the R1, because they're just so nice. Every time I've ridden an old vintage bike, dude, they're just gorgeous. And one thing, like, look at Triumphs, man. They make a lot of vintage style bikes. Royal Enfields, they make a lot of vintage style bikes with all the modern stuff. One of my favorite motorcycles of all time is a Triumph Thruxton RS. Now this is essentially an old vintage cafe racer. It's even got a carburetor where they put the EFI stuff. And it's so gorgeous and sexy to me. And it's a shame they got rid of it. Now, I understand they didn't sell like hotcakes, but also $27,000 for that bike was a little steep. I'm sorry, Triumph, it's just not worth 27 grand. And now people are selling them second hand for $27,000. Never in a million years would I pay 27 grand for that, but I do think they are gorgeous bikes. They're not the fastest, they don't need to be. Riding them is an experience in and of itself. That it beats speed, all right? You don't need to have the fastest bike to have a great time, and that's sort of the mentality behind these older motorcycles. They're not the fastest, but you will enjoy yourself, and that's the sort of philosophy I find is missing. Like, you watch Mad Max, the guy was racing on an old, like, super sport of the time. Now, that was by no means fast. Like, in the movie, the guy catches up on in, like, a truck or something that, like... Now, like, that just won't happen, but, like, a car could keep up with a bike back then, at a top speed sort of stance. Maybe not the acceleration. No, nothing beats bikes and acceleration, dude, but... Oh, it's just a shame. So, ladies and gents, if you have any vintage bikes, let me know down below. I'd love to hear about them. If you have any photos, come join the Discord and send me some. And obviously, some of you guys have been riding for longer than I've been living, so let me know what bikes you did ride in your youth, because I would love to hear about what you got to experience. I know you had two-strokes, you had old Norton Commandos, etc., etc. Norton's a brand that doesn't get seen enough anymore because they're expensive and rare, but you know what I mean. Anyway, ladies and gents, that's all I have time for. I'm about to head to work right now, so take it easy, keep it cheesy, leave a comment down below, take a like and subscribe. Otherwise, it's been a good day. Peace. Bye!